Ever feel like the universe is on mute when you try to manifest? You ask, you believe, you visualize, you wait, and then nothing. The silence is louder than ever. No signs, no synchronicities, just the same day playing on repeat. Can feel like you're pressing the gas pedal on your dreams, but nothing's moving. You're geared up, you're focused, but it's as if the engine of your manifestation has stalled. Here's the uncomfortable truth. It's not because your dreams are too big. It's not because the universe is ignoring you. It's because there's a hidden pattern running beneath your awareness, a mental software glitch that repeats like a closed loop, stalling your reality from updating. This pattern is what we call the quantum trap, and chances are, it's already been shaping your life far more than any intention you've consciously set. Here's the twist. This trap doesn't look like a trap. It feels familiar. It feels responsible. Feels like you. But in truth, it's not really you. It's a default version of you. A background identity echoing old beliefs, past experiences, and limiting expectations. And here's why this matters. No matter how powerful your visualization, if your internal software is running the wrong instructions, the output, your reality, stays locked in a loop. This isn't about motivation. This isn't about hustle. This is about quantum mechanics and how your subconscious becomes the projector for your entire lived experience. Today, we're breaking that loop. You'll discover the real reason your manifestations seem to stall, even when you're doing all the right things. A simple visual awareness exercise to expose the trap operating in your life. And most importantly, a two-step reprogramming technique rooted in quantum principles and cognitive rewiring. Designed to reset your internal signal and sync it with the reality you've been trying to reach. This isn't theory. This is application. You'll learn how to spot the trap, interrupt it, and install a new program, one that aligns with your true desires. Stay with me, because once you understand how this works, you'll never look at your thoughts or your reality the same way again. Let's begin where most people stay stuck. Believing they're making progress when all they're really doing is spinning inside a well-polished loop. You're not stuck. You're looping. This is not just a catchy line. This is the hidden architecture of why most people stay frustrated, even after years of mindset work, affirmations, and so-called spiritual progress. Let's get brutally honest. Most people aren't trapped in failure. They're trapped in repetition. You feel like you're moving forward. You're reading the books. You're saying the mantras. You're checking off the personal growth boxes. But take a closer look, and you'll notice something eerie. The same types of relationships keep showing up. The same amount of money. The same doubts, masked by slightly upgraded vocabulary. It's like driving through fog with your GPS stuck on recalculate. You're moving. The wheels are spinning. But the destination never updates. Why? Because movement doesn't always mean momentum. You can walk in circles for a decade and think you're making progress just because you've kept your legs busy. Here's the catch. Your subconscious doesn't work off your goals. It works off your identity loop. And that loop has one job: to preserve what's known. Not what's possible. Not what's ideal. Just what's been historically true for you. This is why certain thought patterns feel so natural. Thoughts like, I'm trying, but nothing ever changes. Maybe I just need more time. It's not the right season. These aren't thoughts. They're script lines from your loop. And as long as you speak from the loop, you live in the loop. Let's break this down technically. Your subconscious mind stores programs based on repetition, emotion, and past experience. When something has shown up repeatedly in your life, even if it's negative, your brain begins to treat it as familiar. And the familiar becomes your baseline. The familiar becomes your default signal. Even if your conscious mind wants something radically different. If your baseline identity still transmits the same emotional frequencies, fear, lack, unworthiness, your quantum signal remains unchanged. And the field responds not to your conscious wishes, but to your dominant broadcast. That's the trap. It's not that your manifestation tools are broken. It's that you've been applying them from inside the same unexamined pattern. The same mental and emotional GPS that keeps dragging you back to familiar destinations. Let's take a closer look at how this works in daily life. Have you ever felt momentum, started to believe things were finally shifting, only to feel everything suddenly slow down or collapse altogether. That's not bad luck. That's the loop correcting itself. It senses your breaking pattern, and it sends out what we call stabilizing feedback. Thoughts that sound urgent, emotions that feel real, distractions that demand your energy. And boom, you're reabsorbed into the old timeline. Here's something few people understand. The loop wants survival, not success. It doesn't care if you're happy. It cares if you're safe. And safe means known. This is why growth feels uncomfortable. It's not because growth is hard. It's because loop exit triggers alarm bells in the subconscious. So now that you see the trap, the question becomes, how do you step out of the loop without setting off the internal alarms? How do you move differently without your mind yanking you back like an invisible rubber band? That's exactly what we're going to unpack. But before we can change the code, we need to understand the source of the problem. The invisible pattern, not just of your actions, but of the mental operating system behind them. In the next part, we're going into the hidden programming that's running the show. It's not visible, but it's definitely repeatable. And once you see it, you can stop feeding it. Let's go deeper. Would you trust a computer with a virus to write your future? Here's a question most never think to ask. If your brain is the hardware and your thoughts are the software, who's coding the programs? You might assume it's you. You're thinking, you're planning, you're intending. You're visualizing your dream home, repeating your affirmations, maybe even scripting your future in a journal. But pause for a second and ask yourself, are these desires being generated from an updated conscious place? Or are they being filtered through an outdated mental OS that's still running scripts written in childhood, past disappointments, and inherited beliefs? Because here's the truth most people don't want to confront. The version of you trying to manifest is often built on code you didn't choose. From the moment you could absorb information, your subconscious started collecting patterns. From your parents, your environment, society, media, and most powerfully, from emotional experiences that left a mark. Those patterns weren't input by a wise, empowered, conscious self. They were written by a version of you just trying to make sense of pain, fear, and confusion. And those scripts never got deleted. They just kept running silently in the background, influencing the way you interpret reality and the kind of signals you broadcast back into the field. Let's make this concrete. Say you're trying to manifest financial abundance. You do all the rituals, focus on high-vibe emotions, try to feel worthy of success. But underneath, the code might still be running. Money is stressful. Rich people are greedy. If I make more, I'll lose friends. You didn't program those thoughts consciously, but they still form the foundation of your quantum signal. That's what we mean by invisible code. You're not thinking these beliefs actively, but they're embedded in the system. So when your conscious mind says yes to a goal, your subconscious sends out an energetic NO. And the field listens to the deeper signal. Now here's the kicker. Your subconscious doesn't respond to what's true. It responds to what's repeated. Repetition equals reality to the subconscious. That means even if a belief is completely irrational, if it's been reinforced emotionally or repeated over time, it becomes encoded as truth. And this becomes a massive problem for manifestation, because the signals you're sending aren't based on what you want. They're based on what your subconscious has come to expect. Not logically, energetically. Let's break that down. You might think, of course I want to find love. But if your subconscious expects abandonment, your emotional body broadcasts mistrust. You might believe, I'm ready to succeed. But if your subconscious associates success with danger, your nervous system stays in survival mode. And survival mode cancels manifestation mode every time. That's the trap. You're not manifesting with your conscious thoughts. You're manifesting with your energetic default settings. And those defaults were likely set in a version of reality that no longer exists. So even if your external life has changed, your internal code might still be transmitting from 2007 or earlier. And the field, the quantum field, responds accordingly. This is why certain experiences seem to repeat no matter how hard you try to change. You're not attracting them on purpose. You're attracting them by pattern. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Your subconscious also distorts your perception to match its programming. This means it literally edits what you notice and what you ignore in order to maintain coherence with the original code. So when opportunities show up, you don't see them. When new energy enters your field, you filter it through old meaning. When synchronicity tries to redirect you, the signal gets scrambled. This isn't failure. This is the system working perfectly, based on flawed instructions. So how do you fix it? First, stop trying to overwrite the program by forcing affirmations on top of it. That's like yelling new instructions at a computer virus and expecting it to listen. You need to identify the code that's still running and interrupt it at the level of pattern. Not content, pattern. Here's how you start. Pay attention to your automatic reactions. When something doesn't go your way, what's the first thought that shows up? Is it blame? Doubt? Self-judgment? That's your code revealing itself. Your reactions aren't random. They're recordings. And those recordings are loops that run without question, until you name them, interrupt them, and reprogram them. This is where most people stop. They notice a pattern. They label it as limiting belief. Then they try to reverse it with surface-level positivity. But here's the problem. You can't outthink a subconscious instruction with conscious logic. You can only recode it through direct interface. In this case, that means using both awareness and intention, not just to think differently, but to transmit differently. You are a transmitter. Your thoughts, emotions, and sense of identity form a signal. That signal determines what you pull from the quantum field. So if your subconscious code is outdated, you're emitting a corrupted signal, no matter how hard you're trying to manifest something else. That's the trap we're exposing. Not failure, not lack, just misalignment between your conscious desires and your unconscious instructions. In the next part, we'll name the trap more precisely. You'll understand why it stays hidden so well, and how to catch it in the act, even as it tries to disguise itself as reason, logic, and truth. We're going even deeper into the structure behind your current experience, and beginning the process of rewriting it from the inside out. Are you ready to see what's really running the show? Let's keep going. The trap isn't outside you, it is you, or at least the version of you running in the background. This part isn't about mystery, it's about mechanics. Because once you see how the trap works, not in theory but in your own life, everything changes. Not gradually, instantly, because awareness collapses the illusion. Let's break it open right now. The quantum trap is not a force. It's not a curse. It's not something being done to you. It is you. Or more accurately, it's the automated version of you, the one operating beneath your awareness. It's not about effort. It's about encoding. Think of it like this. You've been running an app in the background that controls everything, your emotions, reactions, expectations, even the timing of your decisions. You don't see it because you're looking out through its lens. You're not aware of it because you've confused the loop for reality itself. The trap is elegant. It doesn't fight you. It agrees with you, tells you, this is just how life is. This is who I am. This is what always happens. It speaks in the voice of your experience. It references your history as proof. It builds a case with evidence you didn't even know you were gathering. And it's reinforced every time you say something like, that's just my luck. I always mess things up. I knew it wouldn't work out. The trap is not dramatic. It's quiet, predictable, comfortable. It doesn't feel like sabotage. It feels like stability, which is exactly why it's hard to catch. Because what you believe to be stability might just be repetition. And repetition doesn't equal truth, it equals conditioning. Now let's look at how this trap actually forms. At its core, the quantum trap is a thought field. A field composed of recurring beliefs, memories, emotions, and behaviors, all vibrating at a frequency that mirrors your past. And here's the quantum part. This field doesn't just live in your mind. It lives in your energetic blueprint. It interacts with your environment. It affects your perception. It attracts patterns that validate its existence. So you don't just think the same thoughts, you generate the same experiences. Even when you change locations. Even when you start a new job. Even when you leave that toxic relationship. Why? Because the trap doesn't live outside the circumstances. It lives inside your internal architecture. Unless the internal program is rewritten, it will project the same conditions onto a new canvas. Let's return to the software analogy. Imagine a computer running a background process that drains energy, slows performance, and corrupts output files. You could replace the monitor. You could upgrade the keyboard. You could even install a better printer. But if the background process remains, nothing truly improves. The core is infected. That's your mind on a quantum trap. Trying to upgrade the external without addressing the code. Trying to manifest a new life from an old script. Here's something you must understand. The trap feeds on unawareness. The moment you start to see the pattern, it begins to lose power. But it's sneaky. It's layered. Because it's built over years, often decades, of pattern reinforcement. There's the surface level, the thought you're aware of. There's the emotional level, the state your body defaults to. Then there's the identity level, the version of self you keep returning to. That identity level is the most powerful, because it shapes every broadcast you emit into the quantum field. And the field doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your frequency. That's why the trap doesn't break through knowledge. It breaks through internal interruption. You have to interrupt the signal that's sustaining the loop. Let's go a little deeper. Most people are not manifesting from vision. They're manifesting from recollection. They think they're imagining the future. But in truth, they're just rearranging fragments of their past and projecting them forward. This is why even your highest goals can get stuck. Because they're still vibrating inside the same field that has already decided what you're allowed to receive. And until that field is updated, the external doesn't change. So what is the field made of? It's made of accumulated meanings. Every time something happened in your past, and you assigned a meaning to it, that meaning got stored in your subconscious. Not just as memory, but as law. That becomes the rulebook your subconscious follows without question. It's not asking if that belief is helpful. It's just asking, is this familiar? And if the answer is yes, it obeys. The quantum trap is the sum of all those unquestioned meanings. It becomes a self-sustaining mechanism, which is why no matter how many times you say, I am abundant, if the field says, you're always just getting by, that's the frequency that will win. Now here's the good news. The trap might feel complex, but the mechanism is simple. And that's what makes it breakable. It runs on repetition, so it can be broken by disruption. It runs on familiarity, so it can be broken by contradiction. It runs on automation, so it can be broken by awareness. The trap is not a prison. It's a loop, and loops don't require force to escape. They require redirection. In the next part, we'll do exactly that. You'll get a short awareness technique, a test, to identify your personal trap pattern, not someone else's, yours. You'll see, with absolute clarity, the exact loop that's been stalling your energy and confusing your signal. No guesswork, no analysis paralysis, just one exercise that opens the doorway from automation to intention. And from there, we start rewriting the program. Let's expose your trap and begin the shift. Awareness test. What's your trap? I'll show you a 10-second trick to reveal the trap you've been living inside. This is the part most people never reach. Because they get stuck in theory. They study the trap. They understand the trap. They can even explain the trap to others. But they never see it in action because it's too close, too familiar, too internalized to notice. That ends now. You're going to run a simple awareness test. Not to impress your mind, but to expose the pattern that's been running your life beneath your conscious awareness. The trap isn't hiding behind complexity. It's hiding behind speed. It moves faster than your awareness until you slow down and catch it in the act. So here's how we begin. Take a breath, close your eyes, and bring to mind something you've deeply wanted to manifest, something that matters to you. Could be love, financial freedom, a creative breakthrough, a physical shift. Bring it fully into your awareness now. Now see it, feel it, picture it vividly, as if it were already real, already yours. Hold that image. Now comes the test. As you sit with that image, ask yourself this, and do it honestly. What's the first discomfort that shows up? Is it a thought? A doubt? A tightening in your chest? A sudden distraction? A sense of disbelief? A voice that says, "This is silly," or "This won't last," or "That's not possible for people like me"? Pause right here. That's it. That's your trap. That's the invisible field revealing its signature. The pattern that kicks in precisely when your vision starts to gain energy. It's the loop that activates to pull you back into the familiar. And the most fascinating part? It usually arrives as a whisper, not a scream. This isn't resistance at full volume. This is resistance disguised as logic, as doubt, as self-protection, as realism. You might feel it as a pull in the body, a sudden need to change the subject. You might feel your mind drifting, thinking of something else more important. You might feel a shift in emotion, from excitement to fear, or even numbness. That is the trap in real time. Now don't resist it. Observe it. You are watching the program in motion. You are no longer inside it, you're watching it fire off its usual sequence. And once you can witness it, you've taken the first step out of it. Because awareness cuts the loop. Let's go deeper. That discomfort, whatever form it takes, is a signature. It's your personal subconscious firewall. It kicks in any time your energy begins to contradict your stored blueprint. And what does that blueprint contain? Years of programmed beliefs about what's realistic, what's allowed, what's acceptable, what's safe. So when you start reaching for a new outcome, the firewall activates. You don't really believe this. It's not time yet. You need to work harder first. What will people think? You've failed before. These aren't thoughts. They're code. And that code has one job: to prevent you from leaving the vibrational baseline you've lived in for years. Here's where most people go wrong. They think the discomfort means they're on the wrong path. So they stop. But the discomfort isn't a sign to stop. It's a signal that you've reached the edge of the trap. And when you stay conscious in that moment, when you watch the resistance instead of obeying it, something incredible happens. You separate from the program. You create space. You become the observer. And in quantum terms, the observer begins to reshape the field. This is not philosophical. This is mechanical. Because now you've slowed the loop. You've identified the entry point. You've caught the trigger. From this point forward, you can track that reaction anytime you move toward growth, expansion, or unknown possibility. And every time you witness it without being pulled in, the pattern weakens. Every time you bring awareness instead of reaction, the field recalibrates. But let's not stop there. Let's turn this into a real tool. Here's a practical way to use this test daily. Identify the goal, bring it clearly into your focus. Visualize it as already true. No longing, no hope, just reality. Feel for the resistance, the internal glitch, the energetic interruption. Label it without judgment. Just note what shows up. Stay present without reacting. Let the discomfort be seen without acting on it. You've just started the process of rewiring. Not by force, but by frequency. Remember, the trap doesn't need you to agree with it. It just needs you to believe it without questioning. Now that you've questioned it, even just once, you've broken the automatic spell. And from here, we can move into the next level. Identifying how the way you look at your life, the lens through which you see, might be the very thing keeping your future frozen in place. Because next, we're exploring something even more fundamental than the trap. We're looking at the observer effect, and how your current awareness is literally shaping the outcomes you keep repeating. You've caught the pattern. Now it's time to shift the signal. Let's keep going. Could the way you look at your life be the reason it won't change? You've probably heard the term observer effect in quantum physics, the idea that the very act of observation changes the outcome of an experiment. That particles behave differently when they're being watched. That the observer is not a passive witness but an active participant in the creation of reality. Now apply that same concept to your own life. What happens when you look at your goals through the lens of history, disappointment, fear, or doubt? What kind of behavior does that observation trigger in your reality? More of the same. Because just like particles in a quantum field, your experiences collapse into form based on the energy of the observer. You Here's the hard truth. You can't create a new future while constantly looking at your life through the lens of your past. Most people aren't manifesting from vision. They're manifesting from memory. They're trying to generate change while still observing themselves as the version that's been stuck. And as long as you keep watching yourself as stuck, small, or behind, that's the outcome you continue to collapse into form. Let's unpack this in real terms. You wake up in the morning. You think about yesterday. You replay a conversation. You remind yourself of what's not working. You check your bank account. You scan your body for symptoms. You scroll, compare, judge. And then you call it reality. But that isn't reality. That's observation. And the emotional energy behind that observation is shaping your signal. So when you go to visualize something new later that day, a better job, a deeper relationship, a sense of purpose, you're doing it from the emotional residue of all the moments you just relived. That emotional residue becomes the observer field. And that field is what collapses potential into your lived experience. You might say, I want something new. But if the observer is still looking at life with the emotional energy of limitation, nothing changes. Because change isn't about the picture you hold. It's about the energy you hold while holding the picture. The quantum field doesn't respond to fantasy. It responds to frequency. This is why so many people feel like they're doing the work, but not getting results. Because they're applying conscious effort without changing the observer identity. They want abundance while observing themselves as broke. They want love while observing themselves as unworthy. They want success while observing themselves as behind. It's not that they don't want it badly enough. It's that they haven't shifted who's doing the watching. Let's bring this into practical focus. You're watching yourself go through life. You notice the delays, the obstacles, the things that feel out of reach. Each time you see those things, you draw conclusions. And those conclusions become statements of identity. I guess it's always going to be hard. Maybe I just don't have what it takes. Other people get there faster. Now here's the trap. The more you observe through that filter, the more the field responds by reinforcing it. Not because it's true, because it's being consistently seen. Your consistent attention is shaping the probability wave of your outcomes. So the question is, how do you change your life without first changing the way you're looking at your life? You can't. And that's the key. To break the cycle, you must change the identity of the observer. Not by pretending, not by faking positivity, but by shifting the internal posture from past-based reaction to future-based creation. Here's how that begins. Start observing your life as if the outcome you want is already true. Not as a fantasy, as a lens. Start catching the moments when you collapse into the old observer, the one who expects delay, who predicts disappointment, who filters for lack. Name that version. Literally. Give it a label. And the moment it shows up, step back. Watch it. Don't fight it. Just notice the voice, the filter, the angle. Then shift. Ask yourself, how would the version of me who already has this see today? What would they notice first? How would they interpret this delay? That's the new observer. The moment you start observing from that upgraded lens, your field begins responding to a different signal. You're not faking it. You're realigning it. Because here's what you need to understand. The field doesn't just respond to what you want. It responds to the version of you that's doing the wanting. And the version of you observing life through hope, but still feeling like a victim of the past, is emitting a split frequency. That split cancels momentum. You must become a coherent observer. That means the thoughts, emotions, and beliefs you hold while observing your life must match the frequency of the outcome you desire. That's when the field begins to shift. Not instantly, but undeniably. You'll notice different thoughts showing up. You'll respond differently to old triggers. You'll start catching patterns before they pull you under. And from there, reality begins to move. Not because it changed by accident, but because you changed the angle from which it's being seen. The observer effect is not just a scientific principle. It's a daily practice. It's the discipline of witnessing your life through the lens of the version of you that no longer tolerates the trap. Because the moment you observe from the frequency of the new, the old cannot sustain itself. In the next part, we go into the heart of the mismatch. Why so many people are sending out mixed signals by trying to manifest from the wrong self. The current self cannot hold the blueprint of the future unless the internal identity has shifted to match it. Let's explore that misalignment and how to correct it. We're just getting started. Your dreams are tuned to a version of you that doesn't exist yet. You've set your intention. You've imagined the life you want. You've even aligned your routine to match your goals. But nothing's shifting. You're not blocked because your dream is too big. You're blocked because you're trying to receive that dream while still living from the version of you that doesn't match it. That's the silent friction point in nearly every failed manifestation. It's not about energy. It's about identity. Let's break it down. Every desired outcome is already coded to a specific frequency. Not just emotional, structural. Meaning that reality is a perfect match to a certain version of you, one with a different thought pattern, emotional signature, and energetic posture. If you're trying to pull that version of reality into the world, but you're still thinking, feeling, and behaving like the you who hasn't lived it, the system short circuits. Not out of punishment, out of incoherence. The quantum field isn't punishing you. It's just obeying the alignment principle. Coherence creates clarity, and clarity is what collapses possibilities into physical form. So when your intention says one thing but your identity says another, the field defaults to the dominant frequency, and that frequency is coming from your sense of self. You don't get what you want. You get what you are. And by are, we don't mean what you say you are, we mean what you consistently feel, believe, expect, and embody. Let's look at this practically. Say you want to manifest a new business. You start visualizing success, income, impact. You plan, you prepare. But if your internal identity still sees yourself as someone trying to become successful, then you haven't yet matched the frequency of someone who is successful. And that gap, that difference between your desired outcome and your self-perception, becomes a distortion field. The signal you send out becomes garbled. And the universe, the quantum matrix, responds not to your effort but to the frequency embedded in your sense of self. Now let's go deeper. Identity isn't just a concept. It's an energetic framework. It controls what kind of ideas you even have access to. It controls what you think is possible on a subconscious level. It controls how quickly you bounce back from failure. And most importantly, it controls what reality feels natural to you. Because you only allow in what feels emotionally familiar, even if that familiarity is struggle or lack or limitation. Here's where the trap reinforces itself. You think you're working hard to change your life, but you're doing it from an internal self-image that expects the struggle to continue. That expects rejection. That expects delay. So even when opportunities arise, you reject them. Not overtly, but through hesitation, through delay, through unconscious sabotage. The wrong identity doesn't block your dreams directly. It just filters out every frequency that doesn't match its story. Now pause and reflect on this. Have you ever felt like a breakthrough was close? Like it was just around the corner, but you couldn't seem to grab it? That's not about timing. That's about tuning. You were trying to receive a reality that required a different inner architecture than the one you were broadcasting. That's why visualization alone isn't enough. That's why mindset work by itself falls short. Because unless you become the version of you who matches the outcome, emotionally, mentally, energetically, the signal collapses into silence. Here's the real work. You must upgrade the self-image before the external reflects it. You must shift who's holding the intention, not just what the intention is. This is where most manifestation advice misses the mark. It focuses on surface-level desire without guiding you to change the identity behind the desire. So here's the shift. Stop thinking like someone who wants the outcome. Start thinking like someone who already lives inside it. Ask, how would I think if I were already financially free? How would I breathe, speak, decide? How would I show up in conversations, in silence, in setbacks? The answers to those questions don't just inspire you. They rewire you. Because as you begin to respond to life from that future-based identity, your energetic field starts reshaping your reality. You begin broadcasting a new instruction set to the quantum matrix. And it listens. Not because you said it enough times, but because you finally matched the version of you who belongs in that timeline. Let's make this tactical. Right now, bring to mind a goal, one you've struggled to manifest. Now ask yourself, who is the version of me that already has this? Not vaguely, specifically. How do they think about time? About failure? About money? About worth? Then ask, what behaviors no longer fit that identity? What beliefs collapse under that energy? What habits contradict that frequency? You now have a map, a blueprint for alignment. And alignment isn't something you wait for. It's something you practice. You live it before it's convenient. You think it before it's validated. You breathe it before it's rewarded. That's coherence. That's how you become the match, not the seeker. And when that happens, manifestation becomes automatic. Not because you're forcing it, because you've become the version of you that no longer needs to chase. The outcome collapses into form because the signal is finally consistent. Next, we'll go even deeper into why many of your so-called rational thoughts are actually the trap in disguise, clever resistance wearing the costume of realism, and how recognizing that pattern frees up massive amounts of mental energy that can finally be used to build the reality that aligns with your true self. You're not just learning this, you're becoming it. Could your common sense be the most irrational block in your life? You've probably told yourself something like this: I need to be realistic. Let me be logical about this. It's probably safer to wait. These statements sound smart. They sound mature. They sound like responsibility speaking. But are they really? Or are they resistance, dressed up in the language of logic? Let's go straight to the point. The most dangerous form of resistance is the kind that convinces you it's keeping you safe. And it rarely shows up as fear. It shows up as caution. It shows up as doubt that feels responsible. It shows up as analysis, overthinking, hesitation, all under the mask of being rational. But let's examine that word. Rational, according to what model? According to what past? According to what internal framework? Because if the framework you're using to measure what's rational was built from past failures, inherited fears, and limiting beliefs, then your definition of logic is already corrupted. Let's make that real. Say you get a sudden intuitive hit to apply for an opportunity that seems way beyond your current reality. You feel the surge of possibility. You feel the expansion. But then the voice kicks in. Be practical. You're not ready. What if you look foolish? You don't have enough experience yet. You tell yourself, I'm just being realistic. But stop and listen. That voice is not logic. That's a script. It's a well-rehearsed defense mechanism triggered by potential. And here's the twist. The more exciting the potential, the more convincing the resistance becomes. Because it's designed to stop energetic expansion. Not because it's evil, but because it's coded to protect what's familiar. Your nervous system equates familiarity with safety. So even if your current situation is limiting or painful, it still feels safer than the unknown. This is how resistance embeds itself inside logic. It doesn't scream, run. It calmly says, you're not quite ready yet. It doesn't block the door. It gives you reasons to walk away from it. And it feels smart. That's the trap. Feels smart. But being careful is not the same as being aligned. And being cautious is not the same as being conscious. So here's the deeper question you need to start asking. Is this thought protecting my future or preserving my past? Because most people confuse wisdom with pattern recognition. They call something wise simply because it feels emotionally comfortable. But comfort is not a measure of truth. It's a measure of repetition. And that's where resistance hides. In the voice that says, now's not the right time. You'll look desperate. You don't want to get your hopes up. These aren't insights. They're firewalls. They exist to keep your identity consistent, not to help you expand it. So now we introduce a key practice. Interrogate your logic. Every time a so-called reasonable thought tells you to hold back, pause and ask, who taught me this logic? What evidence is it based on? Is this protecting me or limiting me? Is this old survival wrapped in new language? When you start to interrogate the structure behind your logic, you begin to see the trap from the inside out. You'll notice that most of your mental truths aren't truths. They're just conclusions formed in moments of pain, loss, or fear. And now they're posing as intelligent thoughts. Here's an example. You've been rejected before. So now your logic says, don't reach out first. But that's not strategy, that's memory. It's your system avoiding the emotional echo of the past, not your wisdom reading the present. This is how the trap sustains itself. It uses your past as the measuring stick for your future. And it cloaks itself in language that feels mature, calm, and cautious. But all it's doing is keeping your signal invisible. So the quantum field doesn't respond. Not because it can't. Because you've withdrawn your energy in the name of being careful. Now let's turn this into action. The next time you have a powerful desire, a bold idea, a sudden inspiration, don't immediately ask, is this smart? Ask instead, who is evaluating this idea, the old self or the expanded self? Because the old self will reject anything unfamiliar. And the expanded self doesn't need safety, it needs alignment. You'll know you've caught resistance in disguise when it gives you reasons to wait but can't give you a vision that feels alive. Because logic without energy is just hesitation pretending to be wisdom. So how do you disarm the trap? You stop letting every thought that sounds rational go unchallenged. You stop bowing to every emotion that feels familiar. You stop treating inner caution as automatic truth. Instead, you return to your internal signal. And you let your expanded self make the decisions, not the protective self playing defense. This takes practice, takes awareness. It takes the discipline to stop asking, is this logical? And start asking, is this mine? Because once you strip resistance of its costume, it has no power left. It's just an echo, one you no longer need to obey. Next, you'll understand why emotional patterns, even the ones you thought were healed, might still be creating an energetic loop that reinforces your current results. Because it's not just thoughts that sustain the trap. It's emotion, unprocessed, recycled, and unconsciously broadcast. And that emotional echo might be the frequency that's been blocking your shift. It's time to hear what's still ringing through your field. Are you recycling emotions from a past that no longer exists? You've probably felt it before. A sudden wave of heaviness that seems to come out of nowhere. No clear trigger, no logical reason, just a drop in energy, a dip in mood, a pull backward. That's not random. That's an emotional echo. It's the residue of a past experience still vibrating in your field. And when you don't process it fully, it doesn't just sit in your memory. It loops through your body, your decisions, your vibration. And every time it loops, it reaffirms your current reality, even when that reality no longer fits the truth of who you're becoming. Let's be clear. Emotion is not just a feeling. It's frequency. And frequency is the signal the field responds to. So if your emotional body is still broadcasting guilt, fear, shame, disappointment, even if your conscious mind is focused on abundance, joy, or love, the field tunes to the dominant broadcast. And more often than not, the dominant broadcast comes from unprocessed emotional patterns that have become automated. This is the emotional echo loop. It starts when you experience a strong emotional event, a heartbreak, a failure, a betrayal, a loss, and instead of fully feeling it, understanding it, and integrating it, you bury it. You try to move on. You try to stay positive. But here's the problem. Emotion that's suppressed doesn't disappear. It just waits. And it echoes. It replays at the edge of every major decision. It distorts how you interpret neutral events. Colors your tone, your posture, your inner voice. You think it's you, but it's the echo. And because the echo feels so familiar, you don't question it. It just becomes how I feel sometimes. Or my default mood. Or worse, my personality. But the truth is this. Most of what you call your personality is just a pattern. And patterns can be updated. Here's where the trap tightens. Emotional echoes are sticky. They love rhythm. They feed on repetition. So when you unconsciously feel disappointment at a certain time of day, or you always feel anxious before a conversation, or you default to numbness when you think about change, those aren't accidents. Those are emotional loops. The body remembers. and it runs its old programs until you consciously interrupt the sequence. And this is where awareness becomes your greatest tool. Because when you recognize that you're not sad, you're reliving sadness. When you notice you're not blocked, you're feeling the residue of past resistance. When you stop identifying with the emotion and start witnessing it, everything changes, because now you can choose to release rather than repeat. Let's get specific. Think of a time you tried to up-level, maybe financially, emotionally, creatively, and everything seemed to slow down. You didn't just encounter obstacles. You encountered feelings, fatigue, frustration, doubt. Those weren't just reactions to your current moment. They were emotional echoes pulling you back to the frequency of your old life. Because the moment your vibration begins to rise, anything unprocessed begins to surface. Not as punishment, but as a purification. And that's where most people retreat. They interpret emotional surfacing as something's wrong, when in reality something's releasing. But if you misread it, you resist it. And if you resist it, you reabsorb it. And the loop continues. So what's the key? Emotional completion. You must give space to feel what was never fully felt. Not to analyze it, not to rehash it, but to let the signal pass through completely. When you feel an emotion arise, don't ask, why is this happening again? Ask, is this trying to be released right now? Is this an echo that's ready to complete? Can I witness this without resisting it? Here's a simple practice. Pause when a heavy emotion shows up. Name it clearly and without judgment. Feel it in the body. Where is it stored? What's its texture? Breathe into it. Let the breath expand through the resistance. Allow it to pass, like a wave, not a wall. Don't chase it. Don't force it. Just allow the energy to run its course and complete the cycle it was never allowed to finish. Because that's what emotions want, completion, not control. The emotional echo loop loses power every time you stop reacting to it and start allowing it to dissolve. And the more echoes you release, the clearer your signal becomes. You stop broadcasting from old pain. You stop leaking energy into the past. You begin tuning into the now, fully, cleanly, with presence. And presence is pure power in the quantum field. Because when your emotions are no longer tangled in history, your signal becomes magnetic to everything that matches your expanded state. Not because you forced positivity, but because you removed distortion. Next, we'll shift from awareness into action and walk through the first key of the reprogramming process, collapsing the old code. Because now that you've seen the trap, felt the echo, and caught the pattern, it's time to disrupt the system and start coding your reality in a way that finally aligns with the version of you that's been waiting to take the lead. Let's break the loop for real. Step 1 of breaking the trap: collapse the old code. Let's short-circuit the trap in real time. You've seen the trap. You've felt the loop. You've watched the echo. And you're still here. That alone tells you something. You are not the program. You're the one who can rewrite it. And that's where we begin with collapse. The old code is not just a collection of bad thoughts. It's a self-reinforcing energetic sequence. A rhythm of being that repeats until interrupted. And like any pattern, it can be disrupted if you know where and how to apply pressure. So let's start with the simplest truth. The program has no power without your attention. Every time you believe the limiting thought. Every time you agree with the emotional echo. Every time you behave like the old version of yourself, you give the program battery life. Collapse is about unplugging it. Not fighting it, not fixing it, but pulling the cord that keeps it alive. And that starts with a process you're about to walk through right now. Let's call it the glitch collapse method. You're going to mentally short-circuit the loop by disrupting its structure at the source. Here's how it works. Start by calling up the pattern that's most persistent in your life. The thing that keeps happening, no matter how much you work on yourself. Maybe it's a lack of money. Maybe it's people walking away. Maybe it's hitting a ceiling just when things get good. Get specific. Name it out loud. Now close your eyes and picture that pattern as a looping film strip. A literal reel of moments. Flickering, repeating, projecting out into your current reality. Every thought, every trigger, every repeated outcome, looping. Now here comes the collapse. Mentally cut the film strip. Slice it in half. Let it dangle interrupted. Then imagine the reel glitching, breaking apart. The scenes start stuttering, colors distorting, sound turning into static, faces blurring, the sequence falling into pieces. Feel the mental and emotional texture of it disintegrating. Now take a breath and watch the old film melt into white light. No drama, no resistance, just light where there used to be loops. Pause there. Stay with the sensation. You've just short-circuited the energetic pattern that was encoding your field. You didn't resist it. You didn't argue with it. You pulled the plug. This is what it means to collapse the code. Because here's the secret no one tells you. Patterns are not real. They're just habits that haven't been challenged. They live in the nervous system. They feed on reaction. And they fall apart the moment you observe them without obeying. So when you run this visualization, you're doing more than imagining. You're telling your body, this pattern is no longer my truth. And the nervous system listens. When it no longer senses a threat from releasing the old identity, it begins to reset its default mode. And that, in turn, alters your quantum signal. But you don't stop there. Collapse is only the first step. You must also intervene consciously when the old program tries to reboot. Because it will. Loops hate silence. They look for new openings. A delay? The loop says, see? Told you it never works. A rejection? The loop says, you should have known better. A slow day? The loop whispers, why even bother? That's the reboot attempt. That's the pattern trying to reinstall itself in your mind and body. And that's where you stop playing the same movie. You catch the voice mid-sentence. You don't fight it, you freeze it. You say out loud, that's the old code. It's not real. Not anymore. Then breathe and return to presence. Not distraction. Presence. Because presence is where the trap loses signal. Cannot survive in the now. It needs projection. It needs story. It needs delay. Presence cuts all of that. Collapse also requires that you stop defending the pattern. Stop saying, that's just how I am. Stop saying, I've always been this way. Stop explaining why things never work out. Every time you explain the old story, you resurrect it. Every explanation is a ritual. Every defense is a code reinstall. Collapse means letting the story fall apart without trying to clean it up. So here's your job moving forward. Recognize when the loop starts playing. Freeze it. Don't resist it. Just see it. Collapse it, visually, emotionally, energetically. Return to neutral. Not positivity. Neutrality. Hold the silence. Let your system breathe without rushing to fill the gap. Because the moment you stop reacting, the loop stops living. And in that space, a new code can finally be installed, one that reflects who you're becoming, not who you've been. That's what we'll do next. Now that you've created the space by collapsing the old code, you're ready for step 2, quantum reprogramming, the technique that installs a new identity into your energetic system using intention, embodiment, and aligned frequency. You'll learn how to imprint this new version of you into the field so completely. The external world has no choice but to shift. Let's install the new code. Step 2. Quantum reprogramming. Install the new code. If you had the software for your future, would you install it right now? You've collapsed the old code. You've unplugged the loop. You've created space. Now comes the most critical part, what you install in its place. Because nature abhors a vacuum, and so does your subconscious. If you don't consciously choose the new signal, the old one will find its way back in. Not because it's stronger, but because it's familiar. So here's the opportunity to install a new identity. Not a fake persona, not a fantasy, but the most aligned, coherent, resonant version of you. One that matches the outcome you've been trying to manifest all along. This is not mindset work. This is frequency architecture. You are not just changing thoughts. You're installing a new energetic signature, one that the field can actually respond to. Let's begin with a core principle. The quantum field responds to identity, not intention. It mirrors who you are being, not what you are asking for. So the moment you become a match for the reality you want, that reality starts materializing faster than logic can explain. This process begins with a choice not to wait for the new version of you to emerge, but to embody it now. Right now. Not someday. Not when things improve. Now. And embodiment means living from that version, not just thinking about them. Let's walk through the quantum reprogramming technique, a two-part install that activates the new code and anchors it into your body and field. Part 1. Conscious imprinting. Start by defining the version of you that already lives inside the reality you're calling in. Not vague. Get specific. Who are they? How do they walk into a room? How do they handle delay? What do they never do anymore? What kind of energy do they broadcast before saying a word? Now choose one sentence, one phrase that encapsulates this version of you. A phrase that doesn't describe what you want, but who you already are when you align with it. Something like, I am the frequency of calm success. I move like the version of me who already has it. I don't chase, I carry it. This is who I am now. Say that phrase, out loud, with full breath behind it. Feel the vibration of the words in your chest, your throat, your gut. This is the install command. It's not just affirmation. It's identification. You're no longer speaking about the future. You're transmitting from a state that already exists because now it exists in you. Say it again, then again. Not to convince yourself, but to instruct the field. You're not asking. You're informing. And that's where the shift happens. Part 2. Somatic integration. Your body is not separate from your signal, it is your signal. So you must train it to carry the new code. Here's how. Close your eyes. Bring up the version of you that matches the phrase you chose. See what they see. Stand like they stand. Breathe like they breathe. Now move. Literally. Change your posture. Straighten your spine. Relax your jaw. Drop your shoulders. Feel the energy shift in your body as if it's a tuning fork coming into resonance. Walk across the room, slowly, deliberately, like someone who knows the outcome is already secure. Now speak something ordinary, your name, a sentence, anything, but say it from this new energetic posture. This is what it feels like to broadcast from identity, not from desire. You are becoming the signal. That's how reprogramming works. It's not about adding new beliefs. It's about changing the emotional and physical context of the beliefs you already want to embody. You've now combined intention, identity, language, and somatic energy into one integrated transmission. And the quantum field always responds to integration. Not partial, not conflicted, fully coherent frequency. Here's how you maintain the new install. Speak from it before the world reflects it. Move from it before results catch up. Redirect any thought that says, this isn't real with, this is the only reality I broadcast now. Every time the old program tries to reboot, pause and return to the phrase. Say it. Stand in it. Walk in it. Because repetition doesn't just change habits, it rewires identity. And when your identity shifts, the outcomes follow. Not by force, by magnetism. You stop chasing. You start attracting. You become the gravitational center of the version of reality that once felt far away and now feels obvious. And if part of your mind says, but nothing's changed yet, here's the truth. Everything has already changed because the field responds to the broadcast, not the calendar. Your work is not to force evidence. Your work is to stay in signal, and signal creates alignment, and alignment reshapes matter. In the next part, we'll explore how this shift shows up in daily life, and how to anchor the change through real-world behavior, small decisions, and unexpected confirmations. You'll see how transformation doesn't just show up in big moments, but in how reality starts speaking back to the new identity you're living from. Let's bring this shift into the real world. No shift is real until reality echoes back. You've done the internal work. You've collapsed the old code. You've installed the new identity. And now something subtle but powerful starts to happen. Reality begins to respond. Not with fireworks, not with instant miracles, but with small, undeniable reflections of your new frequency. That's the key word, reflection. Reality is always mirroring back who you're being, Not who you say you want to be, but who you are in practice, in emotion, in response. So when you begin to embody your future identity in the now, life adjusts accordingly. But here's where most people miss the magic. They expect the change to come in dramatic events. But the first signs are almost always quiet, small, subtle. A conversation that feels easier than usual. An idea that lands with clarity instead of confusion. A delay that no longer feels personal. A boundary that you hold effortlessly. These are not coincidences. They're calibrations. The field is testing for consistency. Not to punish you, but to verify the signal. Because if you react from the old identity when something small doesn't go your way, the field reads that as still not stable, still broadcasting from the past. But when you hold your ground energetically and emotionally, even in the smallest moments, you confirm, this is not a phase. This is who I am now. And that's when the bigger changes start to land. Let's talk about how to reinforce that shift in daily life. It starts with micro decisions. The future you isn't formed through breakthroughs. It's built through subtle, moment-to-moment choices that reinforce a new narrative. Ask yourself throughout the day, how would the realigned version of me respond here? What would the aligned version of me say yes to? What no longer fits this version of me? Then choose accordingly. Not to be perfect, but to be present. Present with your new identity. Present with your new standard. Present with your new story. Because every time you act in alignment with that new self, you are grounding the frequency deeper into your nervous system and into the field. Let's go further. Notice your language. The old identity loves to creep back in through words like, I'm trying. I hope so. It's been hard. Maybe someday. Cut that language off. Not because it's wrong, but because it reinstalls the loop. Start speaking from certainty. This is happening. It's already shifting. I don't chase, I align. That's not part of my story anymore. Because language doesn't just describe reality. It codes it. Now look at your environment. The people, the spaces, the habits, do they reflect the new version of you? Or do they constantly echo the past? You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. But you do need to signal to the field that you're serious. That might mean letting go of a task that no longer feels aligned. Adjusting how you spend your time online. Saying no to a conversation that always pulls you into complaint. Reorganizing your space to reflect clarity instead of clutter. Every one of these choices sends a clear message. The shift is real. And here's something even more powerful. You'll begin noticing confirmation events. These are the unexpected moments when life reflects back something you've only just begun to embody. A stranger echoes a phrase you've been using. You receive an opportunity that matches your new frequency. You handle an old trigger with surprising ease. These are not signs to cling to, they're signals that the field is listening. And more importantly, responding. Your job is not to force these reflections. Your job is to stay in character. Because the field is not deciding whether you deserve the new timeline. It's simply asking, is this who you really are now? If the answer is yes, and you show it through your actions, words, and energy, the outer world begins to reshape itself around your inner standard. Let's talk about a simple, real-world anchoring practice. Each day, ask yourself this one question. What would the future me do next? Not what feels easy, not what feels habitual, but what aligns with the version of you that's already living your desired outcome. Then do it. Without ceremony. Without hesitation. Every time you choose from that place, you ground the transformation. You anchor it into your nervous system, and the transformation stops being an idea and becomes a lived signal. Now here's your integration assignment. Tonight, before you go to sleep, do this. Reaffirm your identity phrase, out loud, with breath. Recall 3 moments from the day where you stayed aligned, even in small ways. Thank yourself for being in signal. Not for achieving something, but for being it. This 3-step process, nightly reinforcement, creates neurological and energetic consistency. And consistency is what turns possibility into probability. You don't need to do this perfectly. You need to do it deliberately. Because as you live from the new code, reality has no choice but to adjust. That's not motivation. That's mechanics. And next, we'll talk about the final layer of this entire journey. Why the trap itself was never your enemy, and how it may have been the very key to unlocking everything you've been seeking. This shift was never just about escape. It was about evolution.